we are good to go.
Okay, great. Let me just minimize this. So I got a little agenda I put together here. Let's kind of review that first. We've done our introductions. So in terms of an overview, I'm just going to cover some basic things that you should know, and we might as well cover them now. This is as good a time as any. The first thing is that there's nothing really dramatically different that is happening this year. There's been some important changes, but there are no major changes in terms of how the HOPP module works. So there's nothing really new that you need to learn. This is more of a kind of an overview and maybe a learning experience if you're new to the whole thing. But otherwise, it's just really an overview because nothing has really changed except some of the options that you have available to you in some of the fields, and some of the data that gets exported has been changed, but that really shouldn't affect the way any of you interact with the system very much. You do need to be aware of some of the new options, especially. So if they're relevant to some of the cases that you're working with, you know to make those selections, and we'll go over those in detail. But other than that, there's nothing dramatically different. One thing to keep in mind, of course, is that the HOPP module is layered on top of the NFMC module. That's the way it was designed. And if you're participating in the HOPP project, then when you create an NFMC GPS, you're going to see the additional HOPP forms and data points. But you still need to collect all the data pretty much that you need for NFMC. You don't necessarily have to report the case to NFMC to report it to HOPP, but you essentially have to go through the NFMC data collection process and then do the final HOPP data collection. Covered this, the module pretty much works the same way as it has. Again, the export's been modified a little bit. There's a few new fields on the export, client's first name, client's last name, the current loan number 1. So if the case has a loan and it's a first mortgage, that gets exported. And then if the case also has a second, that also gets exported, loan number 2. And actually, I should have added the servicers also get added for each of those. And then the funder or funding source, and I'll tell you where that goes. That one is can be a little tricky, but we'll cover where that gets anchored. That is also a new data point that not new to CounselorMax. None of these are new to CounselorMax or the NFMC module, but they're new to the export file that you guys will be generating and sending to HOPP. So, that's what you need to be aware of there. Let's go over some of the new values, and we might as well go to the form here and take a look at it, or the forms and take a look at them. I'm going to go into my CounselorMax, and I will bring up one of our GPSs here that should be familiar to everyone. And let's take a look at the new values and where they reside that you need to be aware of. So we have a little form here, and I could be glad to share this with folks if you think it might be valuable. But basically what it tells you is, what form the new options are on. So in this case, the HOPP counseling form, what the field name is, primary counseling, and then what the new values are. Okay, so for example, if we go to the HOPP counseling form here, and we take a look at the primary counseling field, we should see assisted with tax lien issue. Okay, so we'll go to the primary counseling field here, and we'll see assisted with tax lien issue. So that's new. You have not had that until recently when we pushed out these updates, which were a few weeks ago, but you have them now. You have it now. You also have post-redefault counseling for the same field. So if you look here, you'll see post-redefault counseling. These are in alphabetical order. You have post-modification counseling. There it is there. For primary mortgage distress reason, different field, right here. You have scam foreclosure prevention, scam deed theft, scam other, scam foreclosure prevention. I'm sorry, you have those three: scam foreclosure prevention, scam deed theft, and scam other. Here we had our deed theft, which you can select, foreclosure prevention, and other. The same values have been added to both the secondary mortgage distress reason and the secondary counseling. So if you look here, you're going to have your same values here: scam deed theft, scam foreclosure prevention, scam other. All right. So those have been added. Secondary counseling, you have the same values added. So if you look at the secondary counseling, you're going to see those values as well. Okay, so we have here our assisted with tax lien, post-redefault counseling, post-modification counseling. We have assisted with tax lien, post-modification counseling, post-redefault counseling. So those, I believe, are all the new values that have been added to the HOPP counseling form. If you go to the HOPP outcome form, let's go there. Go back to our work plan and go to our HOPP outcome. For primary outcome, we have a few new values. We have referred to legal services, resolved non-mortgage lien, and we have those for the secondary outcome as well. Here we have our referred to legal services, and for secondary, resolved non-mortgage lien. You have those, both of those values in both of those fields. You have those for the first and for the second lien as well. Keep in mind, you only need to, you don't have to have a second lien to have a first. But if you do have a second, you should also select the values for those. Okay, what else do we have? That is it for that. Then if we go to our liens form, there's an important change there. And if we will go here to liens, and I have a loan entered here, and I'll edit it. Payment status has a number of new values, and there you'll notice that they're in red. So as I said earlier, the HOPP module is overlaid on top of the NFMC module, and the NFMC module had these values that you see here: current 30 to 60, 61 to 90, 91 to 120, and then it had over 120. And obviously, they didn't change their data points, but HOPP wanted the HOPP folks, the program folks wanted more nuances, more detail in terms of the over 120 days. So they asked us to add between 120 and 240, 240 and 360, 1 and 2 years, 2 and 3 years, and at least 3 years late. You can select any of those. You don't have to worry about reporting to, affecting your reports to NFMC if you report to NFMC. Anytime you select any of these, for NFMC reporting, it will roll up into over 120 days and get reported to them as over 120 days. So it doesn't affect the NFMC report. It just gives you, greater granularity for HOPP purposes. And you can select whatever you want there, whatever is appropriate, and save. All right, so that's what we have in terms of new values. I think that's pretty much it. Why don't we go over entering data for a new case just to, as a refresher for folks. I'm going to create a new case and walk through the process of creating the data. It's a little bit, it can be, it's a little bit involved, but it'll take us a few minutes, but not too long. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close this guy out. And I'm going to close my HOPP report. I'm going to go ahead here and create a new client.
Jose, I just want to jump in really quick and let folks know that we are recording this webinar, so it will be available at your disposal as you're actually going through and entering the case or clients in and all of that good jazz. And if you have any questions throughout as Jose is walking through, please type them into the questions box, and we'll be happy to answer those.
Great. And if somebody there, Alex, perhaps yourself, if you can monitor the questions, because since I'm typing away here, I won't necessarily see them. But if you think they're relevant at the time that they're asked, don't hesitate to interrupt me. I'm glad to, answer the questions as we go along. We don't have to wait till the end if they make more sense at this point. Okay, so I'm going to start my case here, and I'm not going to be too imaginative here. I'm just going to enter test 2, and we will call this person and I'm just putting exclamation points here so it'll show up at the top of my list, at the top here, since it's ordered alphabetically. And I'm just going to enter the bare bones data so we don't take up a lot of time. I'm not going to put in anything that's not required, basically. You obviously should, enter as much data as you have and as you need. So that's all I need here. Anything that's with an asterisk, I need to enter, but anything else is optional. Stuff like phone numbers and things like that, email, you really want to capture that stuff. It's optional only because, it's possible that the customer doesn't have, a phone or doesn't want to provide it or something like that. But, really, for all practical purposes, required if you can get them. Okay, so we created our client here. And now we're going to go ahead and create our case. So we'll go to intake. And as you all know, for the case to show up, to be reported to HOPP and to collect data for HOPP, it has to be a mortgage default early delinquency case in CounselorMax. So it has to be a foreclosure case, basically. Take a look at a couple of things here. The funding source. Okay, so this is the new field that I was talking about that can be a little bit tricky to remember because it shows up under additional fields. So when you first go into the form, the intake form, it's not initially visible to you. Okay, but if you click on additional fields, you will see a list of funding sources. Now this list is customizable by you. Your organization can put in there whatever you want. So HOPP folks, if you have some specific funders that are common to everyone that you're tracking, then you should let them know so that folks can add that in the admin screen to their list of funders and begin to, to select those. The thing to remember is that for HOPP purposes, it's going to report the first option that you select. And usually it's, you're selecting one funder, but keep in mind that if you select 3, it's going to really report the first one on the list. That's the way it works. So I'll go ahead and just select Bank of America, but just keep in mind that that is the new funding source field that gets exported to the report. It's an optional field. I believe you don't have to select that. In fact, you don't have to select that, but it is something that HOPP would like to collect. Race, we have to select something here. Just kind of choosing stuff randomly. I'm going to say there's 3 people. Not rural status, not a veteran, English proficient, yes, and I'll put in education, that is required, put in marital status, not active military, obviously not a first-time buyer. Household income. This is going to default to whatever zip code you put in there. Any possible county or MSA for that zip code will show up. Usually it's just one. Sometimes you get a couple. And they own the home. And this person authorizes to release information, let's say, and we will go ahead and click Save. As soon as we do that and hit OK, number of co-applicants, so I'm missing something, I've got to put it in.
Hi,
All right,
Jose.
where are my co-applicants? Yes. Yep.
Hi, so this is Ellie. Hi. So there is a question that says, and I'm not sure which field they're referring to, but it says, does that field take away the need to enter the funding source in the GPS screen?
No, it does not. They're totally different things.
The new funding source, the new funding source field is what they're asking about.
No, if I understand the question correctly, no, it does not eliminate the need to enter the funding source in the GPS. The funding source in the GPS refers to, it's pretty specialized. It's basically to report to NeighborWorks if the customer, through your services, obtains new funding to pay for some of the services. For example, if they get a refinance loan, you're going to enter in the GPS, who that lender was. But that's not the same thing as what's in this field, okay, in the funding source here. I mean, you guys maybe are in a better position to explain what the funding source is, that you're referring to in HOPP. So, whoever's, as I understand that it's who's funding, this case. Is that correct, HOPP folks? You're more familiar with the sort of programmatic meaning of that field than I am.
Yeah, hi Jose, this is Joni. Yeah, that's what that means. It's the funding source that the homeowner is being entered under. So in this case, it would be HOPP, if that answers your question.
Right. So in that case, everyone wants to add HOPP to this list, and I can quickly show you how to do that. You go to the admin menu. And you go to intake, and you go to funding sources. Here I gotta get rid of this, or I'm not going to see it. Okay. And you can add new. And you could put in HOPP. Grantor, save. And then I gotta refresh my screen here. Now I have my HOPP there. See it? It's a pretty simple thing to do, but you should all add that. And if you're reporting to HOPP, funded under HOPP, you want to select HOPP as the funding source. Okay, I lost all my data, unfortunately, but I didn't save it when I went off to the admin screen, but I'll quickly re-enter it here. All right, so we're going to say, doesn't matter here. Number of co-applicants, we'll say 0. This is male, English proficient. Put in a birth date. We will select an education. That's the highest education attained, basically, is what the education refers to. They are single, in this case, not active military, not a first-time buyer. I think we said there were 70,000. And they own their home, and they authorize us to release some information, and we will save that guy. Okay. And now we're going to get this pop-up that basically is telling us what GPS or action plan do we want to save. You can actually save more than one per case, but the only one we need for HOPP reporting is the NFMC GPS. So I'm going to go ahead and select that, foreclosure mitigation, NFMC compliant, and hit OK. and then it's going to ask me to confirm that I want to save it, and it has all my different action items here, and I will say yes, and it will create my GPS. If you're in the HOPP program, but only if you're in the HOPP program, you'll see all of the NFMC action items, and then you'll also see your HOPP intake, your HOPP counseling, and your HOPP outcome. And then basically it's just a matter of going through this and entering all the data and all the dates. So we're gonna do that. It's a little bit cumbersome, but just bear with me. I'm gonna select here NFMC level 1 and level 2 and hit OK. And then of course after you, so basically the way the GPS works quickly is you have a series of forms that you access here in the function column. And then when you complete entering the data on those forms, you go ahead and complete the action item. And that tells the system, hey, I'm done with that. I've collected the data. Now, eventually it'll do a check on that when we run the audit report, and if anything's missing, it'll flag that for you. But that's how the GPS works. And the idea is you want to get through the whole thing, collect all the data, and then close the case when you're done and you're ready to report. So we will select here that the outcome is completed, basically just saying we completed this step. It'll default to today's date, but you can change that date if you want. You can backdate it, whatever you need to do. Grantor, it's actually right in this form here. And here you might want to, again, this is NFMC funding source. So this has nothing to do with HOPP, and you don't want to select HOPP. It's not an option on the list. Intake is a couple data points there. Household occupants. So this is a male-headed single parent. And the default reason, the NFMC default reason. Let's say it's a loss of income. And the person's age, let's say, I don't know, I think I put in 1970. I don't know what that is, but let's say 45. And we will complete the HOPP intake here. Actually, I don't think I went in there. I did not fill that out, but these are required fields for HOPP. So how many children? Let's say there's 2, adults 1, no seniors. And this is the HOPP intake date, which can be different than the CounselorMax intake date. So, you may take them on as a case in CounselorMax for, I don't know, NFMC purposes or any other purpose, prior to bringing them into the HOPP program, or maybe not, however that works. That's how you want to do it. Just going to put in today's date and hit save. And I already did my intake, so I want to make sure I mark that. Authorization. Already pretty much set that in the intake form, so we don't need to do it here. Say that they signed. Counseling mode. These are NFMC counseling modes. To meet with the person primarily face-to-face, via the internet, phone, video conference. Select usually it's going to be face-to-face, but you select whatever it is. Property information. Most of it is filled in from the intake form, but there's this property type field, and we want to make sure we select that one and save it. The idea behind the GPS, to give you a little background, is that as you're working with a customer, to hopefully resolve their mortgage delinquency issues, these are, typical steps or almost required steps that you have to follow to collect information and be able to assist them. So it kind of walks you through the steps is the idea. And there's a lot of steps, yes, but it is a, complex service. Credit report, you can go ahead and pull the credit report. We don't actually need to do that, for our purposes for getting a case to report. But of course, if I was able to, I would pull the credit report for this person and select complete. Okay. Now there's some other options there. Since I'm not pulling it, I actually want to select one of the other options. I can say, you know, we did not analyze credit report for this level of service, or client refused to authorize, or what have you. I'm only doing that because I don't want to select complete. And since I didn't pull a credit report and don't have a credit score for the client, this is not a real client, so I can't pull a report. It could trigger an exception in my report, which I can't clear. So I want to select something that's appropriate for somebody that I did not pull a report for. Liabilities, you know, you would typically go in there and enter all the liabilities. If you pull a credit report, those will auto-populate. The person, you know, has them on their report. So I'm just going to say complete here. Income, we already put it in. We can put it in detail here. You can add a series of detailed income sources, which is always better than just putting in, you know, the stated income that the client declares coming in the door, which is typically what we're capturing in the intake form. Here's when we're doing, you know, actual income verification and entering all the sources. And once you do enter the sources in detail, it will overwrite the intake stated income. So it'll match them up, so you don't have two different numbers. You should note that if you don't collect the income in detail, it will report the intake income. Budget, you can create a, well actually let's go to liens. This is pretty critical because there's a lot of data on the HOPP report related to this form. So, you know, you want to make sure you enter all the required fields at least, and they're all marked with asterisks. Payment status, why don't we say between 2 and 3 years? We'll select one of the new HOPP options. Mortgage lender, let's say it's an ARM. This is the income documentation type that was taken when the loan was originated. And, you know, you have a series of options here. Let's say it was reduced documentation. It's the first. Current servicer, this is the field, the new field that gets exported along with the servicer loan number. Those are two new fields on the export, so you want to make sure you collect those. And I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, just make something up here. Term type. You know, you select the appropriate term type. You have a number of different options. Should cover all scenarios. Let's say 723. Original lien holder, original loan number. Don't need to put that in there, but okay. And the starting rate, when the loan was originated. Payment prior to rate increase. Mortgage insurance type. And then you have your current values. So monthly payment, let's say it went up to $1,800, for example, and I'm of course making stuff up here. Current rate, let's say it's up to 6.5. Past due amount, let's say they owe, I don't know, 80. And we need a workout method for this. And we're going to say, for the time being, let's say modify, recast, adjust term. And workout request status, let's say NA HOPP only for now. Okay? That's a value that you see only if you're participating in HOPP. Principal balance, let's say it's 200. And months remaining, I don't know, 120. And then you guys are going to see your HOPP initial intake fields here and your HOPP additional information associated with the loan. So loan amount at origination, you know, let's say it was 300. Liz pendant filing date, you have one, you fill it in, it's not required. Current loan owner type, I'm just going to say private, but if you have that information, select it. Foreclosure at intake, I'm going to say no, but you have the option to select yes, of course. Servicing standards violations, you have a number of options here. I'm just going to select something. Number of settlement conferences, bad faith motion, service change during interaction, and data for settlement conference. So those are all fields that you can enter and that, you know, the HOPP program wants to know if you have that information.
Hey, sorry, Jose, we have another question. And sorry to interrupt you here, but I think it's appropriate. So the additional HOPP fields in the GPS, HOPP intake, et cetera, are added automatically, even if the group recently joined CounselorMax. So that's, I guess that's the question, is if the group has recently joined CounselorMax, are all of these fields available to them? If no, how do you set that up?
So the way that works is that if you don't see them, you need to let us know. Specifically, you could let me know or let you know, one of the HOPP folks here on the call know, and they can let me know. We need to turn that on for you. And it's a simple thing to do. Doesn't take long, but you know, I believe that everybody, you know, Joni, when we reviewed the list of HOPP participants, everybody was on there. But if they're not on there, if you don't see, so let me put it this way: if you create a mortgage delinquency case, create a GPS, select, you know, the NFMC GPS, and you don't see HOPP intake, you see all the other things, you don't see HOPP counseling and HOPP outcome, then we haven't turned it on for you. That's what that means. And you need to let us know so we can turn that on for you. You know, so it's an on-request feature. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. And if anyone is seeing that they don't have those options, any HOPP partners in the city, you can go ahead and email me, and we can definitely get you hooked up with that.
Exactly. Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, counseling mode. Now we're into level 2. You know, NFMC has a level 1 and a level 2. If the person were only a level 1, you could stop here and then obviously fill out your HOPP. You could stop at the level 1 action items. And only if they were just a level 1, and then fill out your HOPP data, and that would be fine. You don't need to do anything further. But this person is a level 1 and level 2, so we're going to go forward, and we'll say our level 2 counseling mode. It's also face-to-face. So it's not the same field twice. It's basically one was counseling mode for level 1, and this one is counseling mode for level 2. The budget, if it's changed at all for level 2, did you do that? You know, did you update that? It's basically what it's asking you to do. Liens, if there's any changes there, it basically takes you to the same form, but it just gives you an opportunity to, a reminder, so to speak, to update values if by the time you get to the level 2, things have changed. Activity types, this is more for, because there's a lot of overlaying in CounselorMax. Obviously, you don't want to fill out completely new forms for, you know, NeighborWorks, HOPP, and NFMC and whatever else you may be reporting to. So this is just a GPS action item for NeighborWorks reporting, but you still have to fill it out. But essentially, you're telling it that it's foreclosure prevention services, and 99.9% of the time, it's possible that, you know, that could be a person that's getting a refinance loan to address a foreclosure situation. It's probably pretty rare, but if you do select refinance, because again, this is only a field that affects NeighborWorks reporting.
Jose? Hi, it's Joni again. We have another question. And it's, what is the difference between level 1 and level 2? We may need if you need more information, just let us know and we can ask for it.
So this is Ellie, and I'm just going to answer that. That's actually a counseling level with NFMC, and I mean, Jose may know the answer, but we can send the question or information about what the difference is between the two levels. It's the NFMC fund. You know, you're funded at one amount if you're doing level 1 counseling, and you're funded at another amount if you're doing level 2 counseling. And there's, you know, 4 or 5 different levels. So that's what that's referring to.
Yeah, exactly, Ellie. And basically, you know, there are different sort of degrees of services is what it refers to. You know, to meet a level 1 threshold, I believe you just basically are collecting data and analyzing the situation, and then level 2 is when you start to address the situation. And we can get, you know, the folks there can get you some more specifics on exactly what those mean. Finance, this is also for NeighborWorks reporting, so if you don't report to NeighborWorks, you don't need to bother with this, but this is what one of the attendees was asking earlier. Does the fund, I believe this is what they were asking, does the funder form field in the intake screen replace these financing funder fields? And they don't at all. These are the detailed you know, financing records that get reported to NeighborWorks if you report to NeighborWorks. You don't even need to bother with filling this out if you don't report to NeighborWorks. It's a significant amount of data entry for probably no value to you. But the basic idea behind this form is that if a person gets, you know, some grants, et cetera, to offset arrears or things of that nature, you would document those in detail to report to NeighborWorks and get credit for that financing, you know, as part of your NeighborWorks reporting process. NeighborWorks asks for a lot of details around the funding sources, whether it's a loan, a grant, or liquid assets. I'm just going to go ahead, let's assume that we're not reporting to NeighborWorks. I'm going to go ahead and mark this person as complete. This step as complete. And you can do that. If you're not a NeighborWorks reporter, don't even bother filling out the form, just mark it as complete. There's nothing in there that gets reported to HOPP. Resolution is our, you know, depends on, this form is going to look different depending on what, whether you report to NeighborWorks, in which case you're going to see these NWO roles. This is my dummy account here, or my training account, so I essentially have everything turned on. But if you don't report to NeighborWorks, and we haven't turned that feature on for you, you're not going to see this NWO role and other things here. But you will see everybody will see their, you know, resolution, so to speak. And here you can select whatever it is. You know, you're obviously going to select something related to mortgage delinquency, like, you know, mortgage modified, or, you know, pre-foreclosure sale, or brought mortgage current, or initiated forbearance agreement is another one. Executed deed in lieu is a possibility. Sold property. You're going to see a series of options that HUD defines or used at one point for resolving a case. And you could select whatever is most appropriate there. You can also select other, final result not listed above. And then the resolution date is going to default to today, but you can change back date that, do whatever you need to do. And we will resolve this case. Okay, I have to select an NWO role because and I only have one option for delinquency cases. All right, so we got the resolution done. We're going to mark it as complete. And here you have your NFMC outcomes. So they are not the same as your HUD outcomes. That's why you have to put in your HUD outcome, and now you have your NFMC outcome. And I'm going to, I believe we have another here too, and we're going to select that. Obviously, they should align as much as possible. You shouldn't have something completely different for HUD that you do for NFMC. NFMC just has a little more granularity than the HUD resolutions. Then we get into our HOPP counseling. And we're going to put in our primary mortgage distress reason. And I don't know, let's say it's, you know, we'll pick one of the new ones, scam, foreclosure prevention. We don't have a second here, but there could be a secondary mortgage distress reason as well. Why don't we select I don't know, loss of income. And then primary counseling we have to put in there. And why don't we select here anything? Doesn't really matter. I'm going to select this one. Secondary counseling, you can select something there. Probably be something different. And then SAMD-related services, you know, if I don't know how relevant that still is, but you know, you can select one of those options if it's relevant. They're not certainly not required. And we'll go ahead and save that. And we still have to mark this action item as complete. And we'll hit OK there. And then we have our HOPP outcomes. And primary outcome, let's just say we have another here. Nope. Let's say client outcome unknown for now. Okay. And then new housing type. We're going to select NA, but you have a series of other options. None of this has changed. There's nothing new here except for the new values that we already covered earlier. And none of these other fields I need to put in, so I'm not going to put them in, but obviously keep in mind that if you have that data, it's valuable and important to the HOPP program, and you certainly want to put that in there. The fact that it's not required doesn't mean that you don't want to enter it or you shouldn't enter it. The required fields are just kind of a basic threshold to be able to complete the form. Everything else is optional in the sense that you may not have it, so you can't enter it. But if you have the data, you certainly want to enter it. And I will save that. Go to the work plan and mark this as completed. And hit OK. Now let's take a look at this. So now we've basically finished our data, and our next step is to run our report and see how this case looks. So we're going to see if there's any issues with the case. Are we missing any data? Are there any problems with it? Does it meet certain reporting requirements, or it's missing certain data points that are necessary? The audit report is going to tell us that. So we'll go ahead and close this guy. Just want to remember their name here. And they're the HOPP demo. Okay, great. So we'll close them. Close this. We're going to go to reporting and global mode. And again, if we've turned on the feature for you, you'll see the HOPP report. That's another quick way to know if we've turned it on for you. Just go to reporting. If you don't see HOPP report, then we have not turned it on, and you need to let Joni or Ellie know, and they will let us know right away, and we'll get it on for you probably that day. So you have your audit report, which we call all case statuses, and you can select your reporting period. I'm going to go ahead and do October. And you have a document here that was provided to us by the HOPP folks that provide some reporting rules. I believe that is current, but HOPP folks let us know if you want to take a look at that document at some point. And if it isn't, send us a new version, and we'll be glad to upload it and replace it. But I believe it is up to date. And we'll go ahead and hit OK here to run the audit report. And it'll open up in a new tab. And it's going to take a little while. It depends how much data you have. It could take a couple of minutes. Also depends how busy the server is and how many other people are running reports and things of that nature. But eventually it will it'll come up. Let's give it a couple of minutes. So it's doing its thing, thinking in the background, going through all the records and running them through the background logic to see if anything's missing or anything is contradictory, things of that nature. You know, there's a series of rules provided to us by the HOPP folks that the data needs to meet, and that's what the audit report does. It sort of runs it through that that lens and flags anything that's a problem, or tells us that it's not a problem and that the case is ready to be reported. And obviously, if there are issues with the case, we need to address. We should try to address those. it depends on whether the data is available to us or not. So it's possible. Okay, so here we are. That didn't take too long. But just to go over this, basically the way the information it's going to give you is the name of the client and the case number here, and then it's going to show you when the case was opened, resolved, the last action date, and then if there's any errors. Keep in mind that these are errors relative to the HOPP report. So this doesn't necessarily mean that all the data is it's only HOPP. It's only the HOPP rules that it's looking at. If you're reporting to NFMC or NeighborWorks or somebody else, this doesn't necessarily apply to those reporting rules. But basically, it shows us all our complete cases. And then here's our guy here. This is the one we were filling out. And we do have an issue with this guy. There's no counseling minutes. Okay? So remember that we, if you recall, as I entered all the data for this person, I never stopped and entered a counseling appointment of any sort for them. And basically, one of the rules is, if you saw the person, if you worked with them, you should have some counseling minutes recorded in the system, and those get reported to HOPP in the HOPP report. So it caught that. It's basically saying, okay, everything else looks good, Jose, but that particular client, you didn't put in any counseling minutes, so either put them in and tell us, for how long you worked with that person, or you can't report them, essentially. There's nothing you can do to get the case to come out on the export except clear these exceptions. We call these exceptions, and red ones are hard exceptions, and yellow ones are soft exceptions, meaning that yellows can be there's none here, but basically flags that tell you, or you should, basically it's saying it'll let the case get exported, but there may be some data that looks odd or wants you to take a second look at it. That's a soft exception, which will show up in yellow. And the red ones mean you have to clear them. For example, if we move on here, move on to the next case, there's no HOPP intake date. It's not going to let you report the case without a HOPP intake date. That's required. There's no primary distress type field entered, and it tells you where, the HOPP counseling form. This guy also doesn't have counseling minutes, and basically the way it works is it tells you what the issue is here, and then it tells you where you go to fix it, what form you go to fix it in. It also gives you a link to bring up the GPS for that person and quickly fix some of those issues. So let's go ahead and fix this guy and see if we can get him to turn to green, which is what we want to do. So we're going to click on Modify, and it's going to bring us right up to that person's GPS. And up here, I can go into my appointments and click on it, and I can add an appointment here.
Jose, this is Ellie. Somebody is asking a question about the HUD 9902. So she says our outcomes are not coming out on the HUD 9902 Section 10 Part M. What fields trigger this that we might be missing?
This field. Good question. Good timing on that question. So see where you see here HUD impact and scope on households? That's what shows up in Section 10. Okay, so for example, if I select here, receive non-delinquency post-purchase counseling, they were able to improve their home conditions, et cetera, I can select that. I could also select, you could select multiple ones by holding down the control key, and you'll get multiple outcomes for that person. Impact and scope. They're not called outcomes anymore. They're called impacts and scope. Outcomes are out the window as of last year for HUD. But it's essentially the same thing. They kind of changed the terminology, changed the values. But before you could only have one outcome prior to last year. Now they allow you to have, they recognize that you could have multiple outcomes, and you could select multiple outcomes. But the other thing to consider there is for HUD reporting, they don't want an overall outcome. They're asking, they don't want overall outcomes anymore. They want specific outcomes, purposes first, and impacts and scope per counseling session. So basically not asking what did you achieve overall with the customer. but what did you achieve during this counseling session? You know, eventually the day will come, hopefully, where you resolve the case in some form. You know, and you can select that as one of the scopes and impacts, or impacts in that case, if they're on this list. But we don't control this list. This is provided to us by HUD, but that's what it is here: HUD impact and scope on households. Okay, so if you're entering this, it's going to show up in Section 10. If you're not selecting these, then you're not going to get anything in Section 10. And this is not a required field. The purpose is required, but the impact is not. Okay? And notice here I don't have a NOFA for my, I don't want to get too much into HUD reporting, but since all this stuff is overlaid, I didn't select the HUD checkbox in the intake for this person, so I'm not seeing my NOFA, but I'm still getting my HUD impacts here. So this person will show up in the HUD report, this purpose and these impacts, but they won't show up in the HUD funded column. Okay? But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and say okay to that. So now I have 60 minutes. Now we're going to get back. We sort of took a, little exit there on to talk about HUD, but getting back to the HUD report. So we've actually put in minutes there. So let's go ahead and rerun our report. And generally, I advise people not to, fix a client, rerun the report, fix a client, rerun the report. You're going to spend a lot of time doing that and waiting for the report to come up. If you can, fix as many of these as you can at one time, and then rerun the report. So what am I going to do that? So I went ahead and I think I fixed this guy. I'm going to go ahead and close this GPS. Okay, notice that from the GPS you have a quick link to the calendar to enter appointments or the log. But you usually enter them here in CounselorMax. You select the client, and you go to their calendar form, and you go to schedule and all that. Well, you can avoid all that and just simply click on this icon and go ahead and enter it. It's basically the exact same thing. So I'm going to go ahead and fix this guy now. I'm going to click on modify. And it looks like I didn't have an HOPP intake. Okay, so I want to do that. Okay, this guy is really old, so it doesn't have the HOPP fields. You shouldn't encounter this. This is just specific to my really weird data that I have in this account. So see, I'm recreating it, and now it's pulling a new GPS that recognizes that this is part of the HOPP. So, okay. There's a lot of stuff that I need to do here. I don't want to go through this whole case filling out. It's going to take forever for me to do that, or a good amount of time, 10 minutes or so to fill this out. But basically, I would have to fill out this field here, this form, the HOPP intake form. And presumably when I do that, I'm not going to clear everything for this person, but that intake date will go away.
So there's another question, Jose. The person is saying, I'm looking at the creation dates for the download previews in the HOPP report, and I can see the date is not within the time selected for the report. What does it mean, that date range we choose?
Basically pulls everybody that's reportable. It's going to pull everybody. It's not really looking at, I have to go back and look at the rules, but the original rule was that it would, because basically, you could have people that have updates and you want to collect the new data for them. You're working with these cases over time. You may report them to HOPP this month, and then some of these values may change in the future. Eventually you'll get to the point where you're not going to work with the person anymore. You're completely done with the service, but you may be reporting them several times over the course of providing services to them to HOPP. So you're going to get updated values in the report and submit those. So you're basically getting anybody who is reportable, essentially. Okay. And again, I'd have to go back and look through the exact logic for how it's pulling people, but I'm pretty sure that that's the case.
So then the follow-up question is, how do we trigger the update if you are working with the person overtime? What triggers an update? And that would be a counseling.
You just put in new data, and we run the report, and it'll pull them in.
So any kind of new data that you enter into the client file?
Yes.
Is that what you're
and
saying?
Even if you don't, yes, even if you don't put in new data, it'll push out the case again. We'll just keep pushing them out. Those were the requirements for the report. Okay, so let me go ahead and rerun this. And let's see if our red flags there, our exceptions have cleared.
So I just want to be clear that I understand this. So what you're saying is that every report that gets pulled, every HOPP client who is still open is on there.
That is my understanding, Ellie, yes.
Okay.
That is my understanding, and I will have to confirm that with you, but I'll make a note of that and get back to you, but that is my understanding.
Okay, great.
That's the way it's always worked, yeah. It's been a while since we originally developed it, so I'm not, my memory's not that fresh on that.
Well, that sounds right to me as well. I don't know about Alex and Joni, but that does sound right to me as well.
Yes. Okay, so it's doing its thing there. What are we doing for time here? I know we had about an hour. Oh, we're almost done here, but we're very, very close to the end. I just want to run this and then run our export. Okay, so now we go back here, and sure enough, this guy now has no errors. Okay, so we put in our counseling hours, and now he's good to go. He's going to come out in the export. And this guy no longer has that. He's still not reporting. I would have to go through and finish the GPS, which you would definitely want to do if you were reporting, if you wanted to get credit and had the information. Now, keep in mind that you could get a person who shows up with an exception of primary distress type, and it could be fine if you don't know what the primary distress type is yet, okay? Or you haven't counseled them yet, okay? And you're going to in the future, but you've got a lot of data entry. So it's conceivable that somebody will be on the not reportable list here, and that's okay simply because you haven't provided those services yet. And when you do, you'll collect that data and enter it, and they'll go from red to green. But you also need to be aware that it could be somebody who's red, not because you don't have that data or didn't provide those services, but simply because you haven't entered it yet, in which case you want to fix it. You want to enter that data and clear these exceptions and get credit for those cases and report them to HOPP, like I did with this guy who's now showing up. So now, last thing we're going to do is go ahead and run our export. I'm going to go back to reporting. So let's assume that we went through our report and said, okay, this is great. These are the clients I need to report. The other guys are still in process. I don't have the data to report them. You shouldn't probably have that many, but you might. I don't know. And then we're going to go to global mode, and we're going to go to HOPP report, and we're going to say download. Same period. Obviously, you want to run it for the same period, or you're not going to get the same data. And we're going to say OK here. And it's going to take a little while to run, and it's going to produce an export file, to CSV format, but you could open it and view it in Excel. And you want to collect that and submit it to the HOPP folks as you normally do. And I'm not exactly sure what that process is, so Ellie or Joni, perhaps you could clarify, or Alex, what they need to do with the file once they export it from CounselorMax. Do they email it to you guys, or do they upload it somewhere? I'm not sure how that works.
So for the groups who are reporting to Empire Justice Center, we have a portal that they submit their information through.
Oh, great.
And I will say, just while I'm talking, that one of the housing counselors said that he thinks that what triggers getting a client on the report is that you enter a new service date into the HOPP counseling tab in the GPS, and that triggers a new activity date so that old clients will show up as having been served in the grant period. And that's how we look at it. We count people who have a service date in the grant period. So regardless of how it gets pulled out of CounselorMax, if it doesn't have a service date within the reporting period, they won't get counted for that reporting period.
Okay, that's quite possible. And what constitutes a service date? Ellie, can you repeat that again? Or what the person thinks it is?
It's the HOPP counseling tab, a new service date in the HOPP counseling tab. And what I'll say is that if you submit a report to us, if indeed CounselorMax does pull every HOPP client on the report, if you submit that report to us, we will only count from that report people who have a service date within the service period, within the grant period, the reporting period, I should say. So you'll need to put an updated service date on old clients that are from a previous grant period in order for them to get counted in the new grant period.
Close this going here. All right, so anyways, here is my, popped up in my other screen, but here is basically my, this is actually not the, I'm going to have to rerun the export. I'm sorry, I had an export open, it had the same name, and it didn't, wouldn't open another file with the same name. So let me just quickly run it again. It should only take a second, a minute or so to run.
So while you're doing that, there is one other question. So I will comment that we also do want to know whenever you are updating a case, whenever you do any kind of work with a case, we do want you to update it and give us the date that you worked on that case. So you report the case, you let us know what's going on with the case, and then over time you tell us what's happening with the case by changing those service dates so that we can see. And I'm sorry, Joni, I didn't give you the opportunity to say what your groups do as far as reporting.
No, that's okay, Ellie. So I mean, New York City groups do not report. Do not submit reports in a portal. They email them to me directly, and we'll just continue doing that going forward. And then I was going to respond to the question on the board, but you answered perfectly, so I'll leave it at that.
Okay, I don't know if it was perfect, but thank you.
Our export should be coming up here momentarily. And again, it ran pretty quickly previously, but again, I had a file with the same name open that I had run when I was preparing, and it would not, there it is. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and say open. You could say save, it doesn't matter. I'm going to just open it. There it is over here, and there I should have all my cases that say, you know, my cases here that have greens. Here's my last one, test 2, HOPP demo. They should be on there. There they are. That's the new one that we just created from start to finish. Okay, and this is the file you want to email to Joni or upload to the Empire Justice Portal. Save that, give it a, you know, a name like, you know, HOPP cases, October, or whatever it is, and submit that. You have the new fields, first name, last name, service, and all that stuff. That's pretty much what I wanted to cover, guys. That's the end of my presentation, unless there's questions. More questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Jose. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Sorry I went over a little bit.
Okay. Oh, no, I just want to say thank you, Jose, and thanks to everyone for staying on with us a little bit after. And if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the question box. We can hang. Jose, can you hang on out for a couple more minutes just for any last questions?
Yes. Yes.
Great. And just a reminder that we did record this webinar, and we will be posting it in the portal and be sending the link around to everybody.
By the way, I'm seeing that somebody sent a link to the NFMC reporting requirements that give detailed explanations of the levels. Whoever asked that question, one of your colleagues, provided a resource there. And
just to bring this up, if any questions arise after this after the webinar for New York City orgs, if you just want to go ahead and email me or give me a call, any questions you have about the updates or CounselorMax generally, feel free to reach out and we'll help you however we can.
Well, it seems like there's no more questions, or I'm not seeing them, or there are no more.
No, I don't see any more questions. So, so without any further ado, I'll say thank you again, Jose, and thanks everyone for joining us today. And have a wonderful weekend.
Take
Thanks,
care,
everybody.
Thanks, everyone.